Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Next Door NetAdmin. Today, as something out of the blue, I'm going to actually take a look at Proxmox networking. This is a request from @TheOnaGuy, and I'll just preface this by saying I'm still relatively new to Proxmox myself. I've only just started using Proxmox in the wake of VMware getting rid of all perpetual licensing and all of the home licensing for ESXi. Because I used to use VMware ESXi, but now I'm using Proxmox. But there's enough in the networking for Proxmox that can be complicated enough that I'm actually going to use my home Proxmox setup to show you stuff about networking, because as you would expect from a network admin, I've got a lot of setup that isn't necessarily quite so basic. So, here we go. This is the networking page for my home Proxmox server. And what you'll first see is there's a whole bunch of devices here, some of which I have created, and some of which are physical devices. They're all mixed together on this page, so let's break them down step by step. All of these devices that start with ENO and ENP, all of these are physical devices. They all say network device, and I've commented them here as to what they actually are. Some are 10 gigabit SFP plus ports, some are 1 gig copper, some are 10 gig copper. Figuring out which was honestly me going, plug a cable in, does it do a thing? Okay, plug a cable in, does it do a thing? Okay, cool. Because you can see here whether it's active and whether we've got VLAN aware there. And these all say no, with a couple of exceptions. This one here, which says yes. So we're going to look at that in a little bit. But just to start, all of these network devices are physical devices. Then I've got this Bond 0. It's a Linux Bond device, and you can do that with creating Linux Bond. And the Bond basically takes two physical ports, in this case the two 10 gigabit SFP plus ports, and bonds them into a single logical device. It's bonded using LACP, so that the switch also speaks LACP, and it can construct and form an aggregated link between the bond on Proxmox and two ports on the switch. So that's a good start. So now I've got some physical devices, and I've got a logical device that is essentially two physical devices that are in a link aggregate group. So how about these other devices here? There's some Linux bridges, and there's a Linux VLAN. The Linux bridges are the devices that you will use when you are adding networking to a virtual machine in Proxmox. And I'm not running any containers, so I can't tell you anything about containers, but I can tell you about the virtual machines. These Linux bridges, I've also got them commented here. One is for my internal network, one is for external, that is the WAN connection, and then I have one here which is just a private internal device. It's not connected to anything. And you can see that because the internal device is connected to Bond 0. It's actually connected to that logical device. And ENO4 is what's connected to VMBR1, the external WAN side network. But the VMBR2, the private one, isn't connected to any ports whatsoever. So that exists only within Proxmox. And it's there specifically so that I can have virtual machines networked to each other without having to go over physical networking infrastructure. It just works better for the setup that I've got for some virtual machines to network to each other directly, and I can do that internally completely within Proxmox. If we take a look at the setup for VMBR0, you can see I have tagged this with VLAN aware. That just means, yes, you're going to run VLANs over it, so keep that in mind. And you've got VLAN IDs that are available. You can see that I don't have VLAN 1 in there because VLAN 1 is the native VLAN. I don't know this for sure, but I suspect if I had something like VLAN 100 as the native untagged VLAN, I imagine I would have VLAN IDs here that go from, useful for NICs with restricted VLAN offloading support. Okay, so it may not be what I think, but I'm thinking that I might do 1 to 99 and then 101 to 4094, omitting the untagged VLAN. That may not be correct. That is pure supposition on my part, nothing more, nothing less. The external WAN bridge, I'm not doing VLAN aware because I don't need any VLANs on my WAN port. And the same is true with my internal only bridge, my private device. It doesn't need to be VLAN aware. I don't need that. So that's the setup there. Then we have Linux VLAN. This is one that I created off of the bridge device, off of the bond device. We've got 3 layers of virtualized interfaces here. From the physical ports, a link aggregate group via bond, to a bridge so that virtual machines can share this network. And then off of that bridge, I have a single VLAN interface. In this case, I have it configured on VLAN 3 because that's where my Proxmox server has its management address, is on VLAN 3 in my setup. And you can see here that the setup is fairly basic. But yeah, so when you're looking at it in Proxmox, it can get complicated, but you just have to take it one step at a time. Physical devices. If you want to do a link aggregation, you're going to need to create a bond. Then from that one bond interface, you can create a bridge between the physical bond and your virtual machines. And then off of that bridge, you can then pull a single VLAN interface for your Proxmox's management address. And because this bridge is VLAN aware, that also means that when I add this device to virtual machines, they also can have a device that is VLAN aware. So let's take a look at my router virtual machine, which, as you can suspect, has many networking interfaces. One of which is just VMBR0. That's the bridge that it's connected to, is VMBR0. Within OpenSense, because this is running OpenSense, within OpenSense, I've created additional VLAN devices for the internal VLANs off of the virtual hardware, rather than creating a separate virtual NIC for each VLAN, because I would have 6 virtual NICs, and every time I wanted to add a VLAN, I'd have to add another virtual NIC in Proxmox. It's easier to give OpenSense a single, here's your interface, now create VLANs off of this interface, and then I just need to create a VLAN in OpenSense when I'm expanding my network structure. So that's this one network card here. The other 5 are all on the private network. And the private network then actually connects to a gateway virtual machine. The gateway virtual machines are here because my current ISP does not actually support true static IP addresses. Bane of my life, honestly. But what they do offer is quasi-static IPs with DHCP reservations. I know that DHCP, you can only get one IP address through DHCP because it's going to use the MAC address of that interface while it's requesting it. And the DHCP server is going to hear that MAC address and send one IP address to it. You can't link multiple IP addresses to a single MAC address in DHCP. It's just not a thing. So, in order for me to support 5 different DHCP reservations, I actually have to have 5 different gateway machines with their own network addresses requesting static IPs from my ISP. Editing NetAdmin here. What I meant to say in this particular portion of the video, yes, DHCP can only request one IP address per interface, but you might then ask, why didn't you just use the OpenSense interfaces to request DHCP directly? Why go through a gateway virtual machine at all? The point that I neglected to mention is that these static DHCP reservations are all on the same subnet, and routers have a major issue with IPs and multiple interfaces being on the same subnet. So in order to remove this, what I actually did is I have all the gateways independently requesting IPs on the same subnet, and then their private internal connection to OpenSense uses a different subnet for each connection so that the router can handle it appropriately. And then they NAT that in order to forward it into OpenSense. So yeah, I have one router and then 5 gateway machines. These gateway machines, however, have 3 networks. One is just the management interface only. And you can see this is on bridge VMBR0, tag 3. Because I've got tag 3, this is a VLAN tag. So this interface is on VLAN 3 internally. The same VLAN where my Proxmox server has its management address. So this interface is for management only. And then you have one internal private network, which just goes to the OpenSense box. And then there's one WAN network, which leads to the outside world, which is where it'll actually request its DHCP static address. And forgive me for continually putting it in air quotes, but that's the best that I can qualify it, because it's not a static address, and every network admin worth his weight in salt knows that's not static. That's a dynamic reservation. Hello. And it gets my goat, as you can see. But yeah, you can do a lot of interesting things with networking so long as you remember to take it one step at a time. Physical, aggregate, bridge. From the bridge, you can do a VLAN or an interface directly for Proxmox, and you can connect virtual machines, and then in the virtual machines, if you want, you can give it a tag so that this interface will always be part of that one specific VLAN, or you can pass the entire interface through and then create VLAN interfaces within that virtual machine, which in my case is OpenSense. That's about as much as I can show you, but yeah, the networking here is all fairly simple if you can think about it step by step. If you just stare at everything, it's going to be overwhelming very quickly. I'm not 100% sure what these OVS, bridge, bond, and import or intport is, but I'm going to guess it's something similar. These are Linux devices natively that are getting passed into the virtual machines via QEMU. OVS makes me think it's something similar to VMware. I honestly don't know. There you go. You're seeing the limits of my knowledge right now, because this is something that I'm still learning. But at least I know enough about Linux devices that I was able to get this set up properly on my Proxmox server. So there you go. There it is. Short and sweet, but it's right there. Hopefully you found this interesting and useful for your own needs. If you have thoughts on other things that you would like to see me demonstrate or things that you'd like to hear me talk about, feel free to let me know right down there in the comments section. As I said before, this one was also a request, so I'm absolutely open to others, other requests coming through, and happy to show them off when I can. So for now, that's all I've got for you. Thank you very much for watching. I am your next door net admin, and we will see you next time.